Last time, we discussed operationalization, the process of defining how we'll measure our variables. This lecture goes deeper into operationalization and talks about different ways to assess the accuracy of these measures that we came up with operationalization. And in particular, we'll talk about 3 ways of assessing the accuracy of our measures: reliability, validity, and precision. So first, let's start with reliability. Reliability is the extent to which the measuring procedure yields consistent results on repeated measurements. That if you are implementing this measure over and over again, you're going to keep getting the same results. So the key word there is consistent, that no matter how many times you try it, you keep getting basically the same answer. So to talk about what this means, let's go through an example. Imagine that you're studying how the U.S. economic performance affects approval ratings of the president. So here's a picture of sad Obama. In a survey, you ask 1,000 people to rate their approval of Obama on a scale of 1 to 1,000, and you get an average score of 550. So next week, after the price of oil has declined, you survey again, and you get an average approval rating of 545. So it started one week at 550, next week it's at 545. So you might conclude that the dip in the price of oil made Americans feel more negatively about the economy and thus more negatively about Obama, right? But maybe you're just capturing something else here, that there's a problem with the reliability of your measure. So where could there be sources of unreliable measure? Why are some measures less reliable than others? So first of all, could be due to human error of the researcher, right? You get this average score 1 week of 550. Well, maybe it's just that somebody accidentally wrote down 800 where you should have had a bunch of people that were 80. They just put an extra 0 in, and that biased the numbers upwards, right? So it could just be due to random human mistake. Or it could be due to human error of research subjects. So you were asking people to evaluate how they feel about Obama on a scale of 1 to 1,000. And that's a pretty huge scale. So it could be that somebody, Juan Mendez, say, is asked that question 1 week. He likes Obama okay, and he says, I feel 500 about Obama. And then you ask him the next week, and he says, I like Obama okay, I feel 550 about Obama. That doesn't necessarily mean that how Juan feels about Obama has changed. In fact, it could just be, to him, 500 and 550 are basically the same thing. So he's not able to be consistent himself, right? So you would have made an incorrect conclusion simply because you have an unreliable measure, right? So second, let's look at validity. How do we define validity? Validity is the correspondence between the measure and the underlying concept. So in other words, does your measure get at what it's really supposed to get at? Does it capture the actual underlying idea? So in contrast with reliability, which is about human error, it's about noise, this one is about real bias in measuring what you actually want to get at in the first place. So let's look at 2 different forms of validity here to think a little bit about this idea. So first, you could have a problem with face validity. Does the measure capture the basic gist of the concept, or is it getting at something different entirely? Okay, so to think about what this would look like, let's look at an example. Imagine you're doing a study that examines whether having family or friends come out of the closet is likely to lead somebody to support gay marriage, right? Knowing somebody who is gay maybe would make you more sympathetic to the cause of gay marriage. Here, the dependent variable, support for gay marriage. Independent variable would be having somebody come out of the closet. So let's focus on the dependent variable. So you're trying to measure support for gay marriage, and you decide that you're going to measure it by asking somebody whether they believed that the 2015 Supreme Court gay marriage decision was decided correctly. I would say that this is a measure that has poor face validity, that it doesn't really capture the gist of the concept. Why? So you ask people if they supported this one Supreme Court case. Well, maybe somebody supports gay marriage, but they also believed that the Supreme Court was not the best body to make that decision. And they could disagree with the question. They could say, no, that decision was made incorrectly, while supporting gay marriage. Or vice versa, you could have somebody who opposes gay marriage, but believe that the state's case in support of gay marriage was stronger, respects the authority of the Supreme Court, is basically never going to say the Supreme Court made a decision. So here, with this concept of support for gay marriage, I've measured it by conflating support for gay marriage with a decision in the Supreme Court. And maybe I'm really assessing something about how people feel about the Supreme Court, not my real underlying concept. Another way you could have a problem with validity is if you have a problem with content validity. So does this measure include all the indicators for all the dimensions of the concept? Remember, with conceptualization, we talked about you have different dimensions that are part of the definition of the concept. So if you only capture one of those dimensions, you could have a problem. So again, let's talk through an example here. Maybe you are studying democracy and you're using 3 indicators in your operationalization. So asking 1, are there regular elections? 2, are elections free and fair? And 3, are elections competitive, right? Are there elections? Are these elections free and fair? Is there obvious voter fraud? And are the elections competitive? You have at least 2 parties that actually compete against each other. So what's the problem with this? This is a problem with content validity because the measure doesn't include an indicator for whether there's universal suffrage. The photo I have here is from South Africa. So with this operationalization that I've come up with, your measures would include a country like South Africa in the 1980s at the height of apartheid as a democracy. This is a country where blacks were excluded from suffrage and had severe limitations placed on their mobility, their freedom of speech, their freedom of association, yet it would be counting as democratic. The problem is that you are missing certain dimensions that would go into a definition of democracy with your measure. You're not including anything about suffrage. You're not including anything about civil liberties, freedom of association. And so the measures that you've come up with fail the validity test. So let's think about how validity and reliability compare to each other. An analogy that I like to use, and I think is helpful, is thinking about a bullseye for target practice. So how close do you get to hitting the bullseye? Well, in other words, how close do you get to actually measuring the concept that you want to measure? So bullseye A, neither valid nor reliable, right? You're shooting arrows at this and you're hitting everywhere. Some of them get in the middle of the bullseye, but that's just kind of due to chance, right? A lot of them don't. So this is a measure that's neither valid nor reliable. You're not reliably hitting the same place over and over again, and you're not really capturing the underlying concept either. So this is problematic. Bullseye B, very reliable in contrast to bullseye A. You're consistently getting the same score over and over again. Roughly you're getting the same position. The problem is that it's not valid, right? You're not actually hitting the bullseye. So even if you're consistent, you're consistently wrong all the time. So here, this is reliable but not valid. And bullseye C is both reliable and valid. You're consistently getting the same score, and that score is not biased. It's more or less the score that you want to be getting. So let's turn to our third element that we can look at to assess or measure, which is precision. With precision, this idea is that your measure contains as much information as possible about the concept being measured. So let's go back to that example about Obama and support for Obama. We used a 1 to 1,000 scale. So this was a test that was very precise, or that was not very precise by virtue of, it was very precise. You had a 0 to 1,000 scale, meaning that people could pick exactly how they felt about Obama. The problem is that it wasn't very reliable. So this highlights that reliability and validity and precision can sometimes be in tension. Having a very precise answer can make it look like your results are very scientific, that you can say, on average, people have a feeling thermometer score of 572 about Obama. And that sounds a lot better than saying that there's a score of 55 because you're able to capture that final, final integer. The problem is that it doesn't actually make your measurement better because it's less reliable. So our next lecture is going to discuss levels of measurement, which is another way of talking about precision, different ways that you can assess your measure to provide more and more information as possible.